How can one rifle spark an obsession with Milsurp collecting? In this video, I am going to try to contain my excitement as I share with you how, where, and for how much I acquired this Springfield M1903 Mark I and the utter collecting madness that ensued from that purchase. I hope you'll stick around. It's coming up on World War Stuff Milsurp Chats Springfield 1903 edition. What is up, guys and gals? So glad to be back. Unlike the federal government that is not back, we are back in business, baby. And if you have never seen this channel before, or even seen this series of episodes in particular, these Milsurp chats, as I call them, it's where I go piece by piece through my collection. Over 300 firearms and items that we're going to be getting to if things continue to go well. And they have been going well, thanks in no small part to you guys that have been watching and commenting, hanging out with me down in the comments and sharing your thoughts on the pieces that I'm bringing up, pieces that you've acquired, where you're finding stuff, for how much, how things are going out there in the collecting world. And I really appreciate you guys hanging out. I love engaging with you guys down in the comments. So 3 episodes that we're going to do on the Springfield 1903. We're going to do this video that you're watching now. We're going to do a wall change episode where essentially I change out the wall rack in my gun room. We do dedicated themes of certain rifles and put all those types of rifles up on the wall. We'll do a dedicated episode for that and just go piece by piece through each one. I don't know that I'm going to be able to fill up the rack with 1903s, but we'll give it our best shot. And then thirdly, we're going to do just a more of an overview, more of a, I guess, a in-depth historical overview, collecting overview from a collector standpoint, because that's really what I'm all about, guys. I'm not a history channel. I don't know it all. I always say I know a little bit about a lot of things, but I don't know a lot about anything. So that's why I rely on you guys down in the comments to share your thoughts and experiences. And if all that sounds good to you, let's get into it. So this is a rifle that really needs no introduction. We all know, well, most of us probably know about the Springfield 1903. And if you're a newer collector, I will do a little bit more in depth on this later on. And we'll go through some certain things on this one in particular, which happens to be a Mark I example. The telltale sign, of course, being the ejection port cut out on the side of the receiver for a 7.62 by 20 rimless cartridge. It's a straight-walled cartridge that was designed for this rifle, laid into World War I, which was essentially it would accept a semi-automatic repeater inside the receiver area, and that small device would cycle back and forth and eject those 7.62 rounds right out the hole in the receiver. So pretty interesting concept. Didn't really take off. Luckily, the war was ended prior to these ever seeing real frontline service. But an interesting piece of history nonetheless. The Springfield M1903 Mark I. I'll throw in some photos of an original Pedersen device, which was the device that would ride in the receiver, the Pedersen device. Super, super rare in today's market. I've seen them go for $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, depending on condition and completeness. They have magazines that stick way out. A really, really interesting device and a really interesting piece of military history. So, of course, this is the Mark I. We'll get into a few more specifics on what all that is and what it entails and some certain things about it. But I found this rifle in February of 2018 at a pawn shop, of all places. So we'll talk more about pawn shops. But found it at the pawn shop for $495, which sounds like a steal. And it even back then, I thought it was an extremely good deal. Didn't know hardly anything. And at the time, you know, you've seen some of these episodes where I've shown off different things. Yeah, I had a few pieces of military surplus in the collection, but certainly no U.S. military surplus, true military surplus items like this right here. So I walked into the pawn shop one day in 2018 as a young collector, a new collector, and saw this standing on the rack. And of course, the first thing when you're looking at a gun store and you walk in and you're starting to look around, you know, sometimes it can be overwhelming, but the first thing that sticks out to me when you see a military rifle in general is that full-length handguard. Yeah, they're going to have a lot of shotguns, a lot of, 22s, of other bolt-action rifles, maybe hunting rifles, things of that nature. But when you walk into that shop and you see that full-length handguard standing tall, standing proud on that rack, things start to get a little exciting, right? And if you've ever done that, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. So, of course, we're having a cigar for this episode. How could you not? Just beautiful, beautiful piece of military history. Beautiful cigar, the Ave Maria. And again, if you don't like the cigars, or that turns you off, or you think it's a waste of time, I guess find another channel. I don't know. So anyway, pawn shops. Talk a little bit about what a pawn shop is. Might seem like a silly topic, but I'm sure there's some folks out there watching that are not familiar with the concept of a pawn shop. Essentially, it's a loan store, right? A money store. People walk in, they want money. They can either sell items to the pawn shop, or they can put up items such as this as collateral for a loan. These are usually high interest loans. They're, I wouldn't say predatory, but usually people that are in a pawn shop looking for money, you know, they might be in some dire straits for money. They're, you know, maybe the money is more important to them than the collateral or the interest rate or what have you. But in any case, at a pawn shop, when you default on your loan, they just take your collateral. So it's, you know, really simple and easy for them. And it also gives shoppers the opportunity to find good deals. So shopping for guns at the pawn shop, right? Let's face it, you're never going to go out there with a wish list going, I want X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3 different items, and walk into a shop and then have one or more of the items there for you. You just can't do that at a shop like that. You're going to walk into a pawn shop and you're going to have to know a little bit about the kind of thing that you're looking for. Know that if you find something of this nature, that you're willing to buy it, if the deal is good enough. And then if you can find the deal, then you can land a score. But again, you're not really going to find more specific items. It's more of like a lottery ticket or a luck of the draw, what they're going to have. You never really know when you walk through a place like that. But again, the Springfield Mark I, I didn't know much about this when I got it. Fires that 7.62 straight-walled rimless cartridge. And I happen to have a few of those Pedersen device rounds here on the desk with me. And if you're reading some of that going, hey, that looks like French, it absolutely is. These rounds are actually, I kind of fooled you. These rounds go to the French MLE 1935. Same exact round. And this example is a German Waffenamt example, which I've showed in some other videos. Really, really nice pistol, but same exact round. The ammo just happens to go along with that pistol. It just happens to be the same round as the Pedersen device. So anyway, let's do a few, let's look at a few different parts that are specific to the Mark I, because all the parts are interchangeable save for just a few parts. And let's get into those right now. All right, again, guys, we're not going super in-depth into the Springfield 1903 in this particular video. We'll get a little bit more into the nitty-gritty in future episodes. But as far as the Mark I in particular, we're consulting J.C. Harrison's book, The Collectible 03, which I'm not sure if you can still find. Found this on Amazon several years ago for 25, 30 bucks, something like that. If it's out of print, guaranteed to be way more than that. Not quite sure. So look that up if you need some decent reference material on the 1903. I've shown this off before. This book is basically just a handy overview. Nothing super historical or super in-depth, but different marks and pieces that you're going to find on various rifles. But we're looking at one in particular. So Mark I rifles are going to have a different cutoff selector, or magazine cutoff rather. So the Type 6 referenced in this book's got a little scallop cutout right here that's supposed to engage the Pedersen device, help keep it in. There's another one that I earmarked here. Let's see. Your triggers. Okay, we're looking at the Type 3 trigger, which is going to have a little milled flat right there on the back of the trigger. So most likely you're going to have to disassemble the rifle to locate this. Maybe not. Sometimes you can get a glimpse, if the photo is just right, you can get a glimpse of that cutout right there at the base of the trigger where it meets the trigger guard. This is a completely refurbished rifle, which I failed to mention previously. This is a refurb, so no Mark I parts whatsoever except for the receiver. So everything that we're talking about right now in this section, I can't really show you on this rifle because it just doesn't have any of those parts. Going outside the book doesn't have everything, but again, you obviously you're going to see this cut out in the receiver. If you are looking at a genuine Mark I stock, you're going to see a little cutout, a little divot right there that's going to align with the hole in the receiver. Okay, so again, not a Mark I stock here, but if you were looking at a Mark I stock, you would see this little cutout right there. And then the last thing is the pin that holds in the magazine cutoff right here. I don't know if that can get in focus. There we go. So on a Mark I, on a genuine Mark I, again, with all correct parts, which this is not, but if this was a correct Mark I pin, this would be much longer. It would protrude out of the receiver probably about another couple millimeters, maybe 2 or 3 millimeters. So there's the parts you're going to find on the Mark I. Let's get into this rifle in particular. Okay, so a lot of learning was done on my part with this rifle in terms of U.S. military history, Springfield 1903 history in general. If you look at the philosophy of fighting in the trenches in World War I and some ideas that we had come up with to engage in more effective fighting within the trenches, the Pedersen device being one of those ideas. Just a lot of history in general that I learned from that. So just kind of looking at this rifle, basic overview, first of all, you're going to see a really uniform parkerizing job, which the original Mark I's were parkerized late into World War I, and just post World War I, they had started to parkerize these rifles. But this one, if you've seen a lot of parkerizing, you'll know right off the bat, this is a pretty fresh park job. And I'm not saying it's a Bubba park job, but it's certainly been refurbished, right? So we see that type of gray, really, really heavy gray phosphate coating. We see it on the recent 1911 A1 pistols that have been coming out of the CMP. A lot of them have that really just heavy bead blasted, heavy phosphate coated finishes on them that look almost identical to this. Another interesting thing on this one is the barrel date, September of 1942. And I'm not quite sure if that's showing up. If I can't get it to focus, I'll just throw in some pictures for you guys, but 9 of 42 Springfield barrel. So definitely a refurb. Got some Remington parts. You'll see some R's there on the sight group. So obvious Remington parts. And then what else we got? Oh, I don't know if this is going to show up, but it's got a SA SPG cartouche right here on the stock. SPG was Stanley P. Gibbs. He was an inspector at Springfield Armory from 1936 to 1950. He supervised new rifles and also refurbs. So this would fall under his jurisdiction of inspecting these rifles. And I will add this, going back to the barrel date, September of 1942, don't fall into the trap of assuming that these rifles were refurbished on the date that's on the barrel. This barrel date is just that, the barrel date. It's not anything else. These rifles could have been refurbished anytime post this date and then just using a previously manufactured barrel. This rifle could have been manufactured in 1945, 1947, 1950. It goes on and on. The possibilities are endless. So just because you see a date on the barrel does not mean that that is when the rifle was refurbished. So we talked about Stanley Gibbs. Another interesting thing about this one, which I'll try to sneak in a photo if I can. I'm really bad at bore pictures, but this one has a really interesting issue on the bore, which I didn't really notice at the time when I bought it. Have you guys ever noticed corrosion rings, something called a corrosion ring in your barrel? This one has a really, that's not going to show up. This one has a really interesting ring right about here towards the muzzle end of the barrel. Essentially, the bore looks phenomenal, except for this one really heavy, pitted, corroded literally just a band, a ring around the inside of the bore. It's really bizarre, but it's a phenomenon, a phenomenon that happens actually quite often in older rifles that have not been well maintained. Aside from that, this rifle is outstanding. It shoots great, and I even found a surprise in the butt. That's always a bonus. I love finding things in my rifle butts. Cleaning kit, right? So if you get lucky enough to own a Springfield 1903, always check your butts. Okay, you got a nice little pull through right there, original pull through with the brass rod and the brass cleaning brush, oiler on this end. So really cool. You know, nothing super practical, but a really neat thing to have just to complete the, I guess, the collector aspect of your rifle. So anyway, that's pretty much it on this one as far as the collecting side of it. Just 2018 was a huge year for me. I kind of described how I had acquired, you know, several things prior to that, 2017 mostly. 2018 was a really, really big year for me. The money was starting to flow. You know, I was getting good raises at work. The wife was doing well at work. So we had a lot more play money. And so that really allowed me to expand my collection, and it just exploded into an obsession. And then later on, just several months after the acquisition of this one, I would acquire my very first M1 Garand. So that will be a huge episode. I can't wait to talk about that one. And I know some of you in the comments have been itching to talk about the CMP. That's where I got my Garand. So that will undoubtedly be a huge CMP issue for you guys that have been asking for it. But lastly, I just want to thank you guys. Never expected this channel to really do anything. Just kind of a personal experiment for me and a way to showcase my collection in a way that I'd never been able to do before. So I'm still doing the Instagram thing, still doing the Facebook thing. I'm in several groups. If you're in those Facebook groups, the K98 group, the what are some other ones? The CMP, you know, 1911, M1 Garand, M1 carbine groups, all that good stuff. Military surplus group, both of them. There's the military surplus group and then the good military surplus group. I'd recommend you join the good military surplus group for various reasons. We may talk about that later on. Some internet issues, Facebook issues that come up when we talk about Milsurp collecting, because that's a huge topic for me personally. But that's not for this video. But if you see me on those groups, Tommy Phillips, just check me out, hang out with me there, check out some of the other things that I post. And that's really all I got to say on this one. I really appreciate you guys sticking around, and hope you'll stay put for the next one, and I'll see you there. Bye.